Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, defendant, and all counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Brought you here this morning for two reasons. The first reason is to inquire if any of you have seen, heard, or read anything about this case in the media. If so, please raise your hand. If you raise your hand, we will inquire further in private. Has anyone read, seen, or heard anything about this case in the media? I see no hands. Has anyone attempted to speak with any of you about this case? Has anyone, other than those individuals in this courtroom? I see no hands. All right, the next issue is it has come to my attention that a jury instruction was inadvertently left out of the instructions you received after the guilt phase. The bailiff is going to hand each of you a copy of that instruction. The instruction should be inserted after paragraph 3 on page 10 of your final penalty phase instructions. Everyone has a copy? I'm going to read the instruction to you. It reads, if you unanimously find the defendant should be sentenced to life imprisonment, the judge will sentence the defendant to either life imprisonment without the possibility of release or life imprisonment with the possibility of release after 25 years. Life without the possibility of release from prison means exactly what it says. The sentence of life without the possibility of release from prison means the defendant will never be eligible to be released from prison for any reason for the rest of the defendant's life. At the current time, there is no procedure for granting parole if the defendant is sentenced to life with the possibility of release from prison after 25 years. Now, at this time, the attorneys will be given an opportunity to make a brief argument about this instruction. Ms. Wilmot.
Okay. Good morning. The question with regard to this jury instruction is the fact that it's telling you if you sentence her, if you choose life in prison, you are sentencing her to die in prison. She will never get out. She will never walk out of prison if you choose life in prison. It means she will stay there for the rest of her life. The other part of the instruction tells you that it is up to the judge to determine whether or not, if you give her life in prison, whether or not the judge can give her the possibility of parole after 25 years. The last sentence of this instruction is very important because at this time there is no procedure, there is no system in place to grant parole after 25 years. So what that tells you is that if you give her life in prison, she will die there. She will never walk out. She will only be carried out. And so the question is, before you sentence her to die in prison, or do you sentence to kill her? Ask for you to sentence her for prison.
Mr. Martinez.
The jury instruction speaks for itself. You really don't need any of us to tell you that when the instruction says, if you unanimously find the defendant should be sentenced to life imprisonment, the judge will sentence the defendant to either life imprisonment without the possibility of release or life imprisonment with the possibility of release after 25 years. The decision as to whether or not it's going to be a natural life sentence without the possibility of release or an eligibility after 25 years is the judge's, not yours. And there is a mention here, there is no procedure. However, once the defendant is vested or has been given the right to be eligible to be released at the end of 25 years, just because there is no procedure now doesn't mean there isn't going to be a procedure when that comes up if a defendant is vested with that right to be considered for release after 25 years. Because at that point, she will have a legal right to be considered for release after 25 years.
Improper argument misstates the law.
Overruled.
And that being the case, that's an issue for another day, what procedure is going to be used at that time. However, the sentence is clear, or the statute and the jury instruction is clear that it's the judge's province, it's the judge's role to decide whether or not the defendant will be eligible for release at the expiration of 25 calendar years, or whether the defendant will spend natural life. It doesn't say that automatically, if you say life, it's going to be a natural life sentence. It just doesn't say that. Thank you.
Ms. Silva.
The jury instruction is very clear, and the last sentence tells you that there is no procedure in place to grant her parole. There is no procedure that exists. So all that you can learn from, take from this instruction is that if you are merciful and give her life in prison, she will not get out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, you may retire and continue your deliberations. You are excused.